What's going on, Triad Hip Hop family? This is your man Kurt from Triad Hip Hop Podcast, bringing you another segment of what we call Lost in Thought. So today, I just want to talk a little bit about, since it's Black History Month, I want to talk about, someone who just had a birthday, and that was Rosa Parks. A lot of you know her story, but you may not know, the full story and a lot of her background and some other related stories that went on around her. So I want to kind of just drop a gem on you real quick so that we can kind of enlighten each other. You know what I mean? So let me give you a little bit of background on Rosa Parks. So Rosa Louise McCauley, that was her full name when she was born in Tuskegee, Alabama, on February 4th, 1913. She moved with her parents, James and Leona McCauley, to Pine Level, Alabama, and at age 2, they moved at age 2 to Pine Level. So like I said, she was born in Tuskegee and then moved at age 2 to Pine Level, Alabama, so that they could reside with her mother Leona's parents. She had a brother named Sylvester who was born a couple of years after her in 1915. And shortly after that, her parents actually separated. Now, fast forward, December 1st, 1955. The 42-year-old Rosa Parks was commuting home from a long day at work at the Montgomery Fair. So at this point, she lived in Montgomery, Alabama. And she was commuting home from a long day of work at the Montgomery Fair department store by bus. Black residents of Montgomery often avoided municipal buses if possible because they found the Negroes in bank policy so demeaning. So that's a policy that was going on back then. You can look it up, Negroes in bank. And nonetheless, 70% or more of the riders on the bus on any typical day were black. And on this day, Rosa Parks was one of them. Segregation had been written into law. The front of a Montgomery bus was reserved for white citizens and the seats behind them for black citizens. However, it was only by custom that the bus drivers had the authority to ask for a black person to give up a seat for a white rider. There were contradictory Montgomery laws on the books. One of them said segregation must be enforced, but another one, largely ignored, said no person, whether they're white or black, could be asked to give up their seat, even if there were no other seats on the bus available. So this was going on in the same place, Montgomery. You had one law, like you said, saying that segregation had to be enforced, but then you had another law completely contradicting that, saying that you couldn't force anyone, whether they were white or black, to give up their seat. So, they didn't know what they wanted to do. They was trying. You had some people probably trying to do the right thing, but you had some people, who was just like, no, we want to keep these laws in effect because we like it like this. Nonetheless, at one point on the route, a white man had no seat because all the seats in the designated white section were all taken. So the driver told the riders in the 4 seats of the first row of the colored section to stand, in effect, adding another row to the white section. So basically, he's like, since there's no more seats in the front white area, you people in the color section, in that first part of the color section, I want all 4 of y'all to stand up, and we're going to make that a designated white section now, just for this ride. And so it was her and 3 other people, and basically the 3 others, they obeyed the bus driver and stood up, but Rosa Parks did not. Now, people, let me give you a quote from her. This is directly from her. She said, "People always say I didn't give up my seat because I was tired." And this is in her autobiography, so you can go check that out for yourself. But she said, "But that isn't true. I was not tired physically. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." So this was that inner spirit of I'm tired and I'm going to stand up. I'm tired of being treated like this, and I'm not going to keep being one of those who cower down and let it happen, because that's how these laws remained in effect, because a lot of people in the black community were too scared to confront the law, too scared to stand up to it, because they didn't want no trouble. They didn't want to get hurt, and they didn't want that to lead to their families getting hurt. But at some point, there has to arise someone or some people, a group or individual, who gets tired and says, no, I'm done. You know what I mean? And we need that in every generation, because there's always going to be a bunch of us who are too nervous to say anything. There's always going to be a bunch of us who are worried about, I don't want my family to get hurt. I don't want myself to get hurt. So you have to stand up at some point. So let's interrupt that, because even though well, let me see. Hold on. All right, so let me give you this before I go too far. So it says Rosa Parks helped to initiate the civil rights movement in the United States when she refused to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery, Alabama bus in December. Remember that, December 1955. And basically what they're saying is that because of her actions, that helped to initiate the civil rights movement. And then she said then it says her actions inspired the leaders of the local black community to organize what they called the Montgomery bus boycott, led by a young Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So, well, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I should say, because he was a junior. But as you can see, her actions led to him saying enough is enough. You know what I mean? And see, that's the thing. It only takes one person to stand up and let their voice be heard, so that other people can feel strength enough to say, you know what, we gonna stop this too. We gonna ride with you. And so people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. jumped up and said, okay, we're not gonna ride these buses no more, because see, the majority of their people that were riding were black. So they're like, okay, well, cool. If that's the case, if they're gonna keep treating us like this, we're not gonna ride the bus. And we'll walk all the way around this planet if we have to, just to let them know you're not getting our money. And that's where power comes in. Because as much as they wanted to keep those laws on books, money was their power. And money helped to strengthen the power of that segregation. So guess what eventually had to happen? They had to fold and say, you know what? We might need to change some rules, because the majority of our passengers are black. So we're going to have to get that money. You see what I'm saying? This is a lesson to all of y'all young people right now who are hearing about all these stories about all these companies that do black people wrong and don't have any respect for their black people. Talking about Gucci, all of them who be putting out little racist shit, and then y'all look at it and say, oh, I can't believe they did that. But within 6 months, y'all right back to buying their products. You know what I mean? You can't support companies like that, because see, that's how they know how they get you. Because they're like, okay, we'll do whatever the fuck we want, and if they react in a certain way, we'll change the rules. You know what I mean? Because these people ain't changing how they feel. They're just putting rules in effect as long as they know you'll bend and obey those rules. And so they like, basically, we can put anything we want on these Gucci products. We can have a nigga hanging by a noose and y'all still gonna buy our shit. Because that's y'all weakness. Y'all feel like y'all got to stunt on everybody. Y'all feel like the only way y'all gonna get respect is by wearing this overindulgent bullshit. You ain't gonna never catch me in no bullshit like that. I don't support companies like that. I don't give a fuck if I had $1 million, trillion, zillion, kabillion dollars right now. It's not happening. I'm gonna get the things that I want. I might get, some nice stuff. But if I know a company has done racist shit and they ain't changing shit about it, oh yeah, oh yeah, I'm done. You're not gonna catch me in this stuff. So anyway, the Montgomery bus boycott lasted more than a year, during which Parks, not coincidentally, lost her job and ended only when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. You see what I'm saying? So this lasted more than a year of people saying we're not giving in. Black people saying we're not giving in. And guess what? Like I said, eventually they had to give in, so the courts had to rule that segregation was unconstitutional. And we can't keep doing that because the forefathers set up the Constitution in a certain way that gave everybody liberties, not just some people. And so they had to eventually fold and say, you know what, we can't keep doing this. So over the next half century, Parks became a nationally recognized symbol of dignity and strength in the struggle to end entrenched racial segregation. Now, with that being said, before I go any further, I want to mention something because a lot of people know the story of Rosa Parks as far as her refusing to give up her seat, but they don't know that she wasn't the first one. You know what I mean? There was another young lady a lot younger than her. Now remember what I said, Rosa Parks, December 1955, at the age of 42. Rewind 9 months. In the same city, March of 1955, Montgomery, Alabama, a young lady, 15 years old, by the name of Claudette Colvin, and her friends went through the same exact thing on the bus. So let me tell you her story. And this is not to overshadow Rosa Parks, because we definitely want to celebrate her. But we have to understand that this could have been the thing that led to Rosa Parks, because Rosa Parks may have heard about this and said, you know what, I'm with you. I'm not doing it either. So on March 2nd, 1955, a 15-year-old girl, black girl named Claudette Colvin, and her friends had just finished their classes and were let out of school early. And here's a quote from her. She said, "We walked downtown and my friends and I saw the bus and we decided to get on it. It was right across the road from Dr. Martin Luther King's church," Colvin says. And remember, this is going on in the same city, Montgomery, Alabama, just 9 months earlier. She said, "The white people were always seated at the front of the bus and the black people were always seated at the back of the bus. The bus driver had the authority to assign seats, so when more white passengers got on the bus, he asked for our seats." So basically, he was cool with them sitting down, but once it got too crowded with the white people, he's like, y'all need to give up y'all seats and let these white folks sit down so we can create an extra white section. Sound familiar? Same exact thing. So the problem arose because all the seats on the bus were taken. Colvin and her seat and her friends were sitting on a row a little more than halfway down the bus. 2 were on the right side and 2 were on the left. And a white passenger was standing in between them in the aisle. So the driver wanted all of them to move to the back and stand so that the white passenger could sit. And here's a quote from her directly. Colvin said, "He wanted me to give up my seat for a white person, and I actually would have done it if it were an elderly person. But this was a young white woman. 3 of the students had got up reluctantly." Sound familiar? Same thing with Rosa Parks. The other 3 kids she was with reluctantly got up and went to move to the back of the bus. So I remained sitting, she said, next to the window. The driver kept on going, but he stopped when he reached a junction where a police squad car was waiting. The 2 policemen boarded the bus and asked Colvin why she wouldn't give up her seat. The driver kept, excuse me, she said, I was more defiant, and then they knocked my books out of my lap, and one of them grabbed my arm. I don't even remember how I got off that bus, but the other students say that they manhandled me off the bus and put me in a squad car. But what I do remember is that when they asked me to stick my arms out the window, and that's when they handcuffed me, Colvin says. Instead of being taken to a juvenile detention center, because remember, she was only 15, they took her to an adult jail and put her in a small cell that had a broken sink and a cot with a mattress. And you know this was probably just as dirty and nasty, a broken sink where you probably couldn't even use it. She said, I was scared, and it was really, really frightening. It was like those Western movies where they put the bandit in a jail cell and you could hear the keys. I can still vividly hear the click of those keys. I waited for about 3 hours until my mother arrived with my pastor to bail me out. My mother knew I was disappointed with the system and all the injustice that we were receiving, and she said, well, Claudette, you finally did it. After Colvin was released from prison, there were fears that her home would be attacked. Members of the community acted as lookouts while Colvin's father sat up all night with a shotgun just in case the Ku Klux Klan turned up. You see what I'm saying? You see what people had to go through just because they were worried about what would happen to their family? Colvin was the first person to be arrested for challenging Montgomery's bus segregation policies, so her story did make a few local newspapers, but 9 months later, the same exact act of defiance by Rosa Parks was the one that got reported all over the world. And just like Colvin, Parks was commuting home and was seated in the colored section of the bus when the seats were filled, and the driver, J. Fred Black, asked Parks and 3 others to give up their seats, and just like Colvin, Parks refused and was arrested and fined. So this is the thing. You don't hear too much about, Claudette Colvin's story because it made a few local papers, but, they probably thought, if we hurry up and sweep this one under the rug, it won't really cause no tension, so let's hurry up and throw her in jail. That'll probably make all the other Negroes scared to do anything. And 9 months later, Rosa Parks did her thing. Now, I can only imagine that Rosa Parks probably heard about her story, being as though they were in the same city of Montgomery, Alabama. You can't be in the same city and not know about something like that. That's big when a black person at that time defied the rules of white society. Even though the Constitution gave us our own freedoms, they still made their own local laws that defied that. So, I can only imagine that Rosa Parks had to have heard about her story and finally one day said, you know what, I'm done. I'm tired. And I want to be part of that movement that changes things. I really like how she did what she did, but I really feel like she probably got inspired by Claudette Colvin because it only takes one person to get to another, to get to another, to get to another. And eventually something got to give. People get tired, and some of us just grow a backbone a little bit faster than the others. And we need more of that in our generation now, because right now, the direction that the world is heading in, especially the United States, we're going downhill. We're not climbing to a higher level at all. Right now, we're going downhill, and I hear people saying, oh man, we've never been more divided. That's pure bullshit. Because if you look at these stories of Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks, this is nothing but a recycled version of what they went through. We've always been divided, ever since black people were brought here. Because if we weren't, then there would have been a time period where we can say, oh yeah, we were equal at that time. Nah, not a time. So just want to talk about that because that's important, and we need these type of stories, these types of stories to kind of give us that inspiration to stand up. Because I'm not one of those persons that's going to lay down, you know what I mean, real easy on something. When I was younger, I was a lot more timid and scared to speak up, but the older I got, the more I realized it's not worth it. It doesn't help anything for me to just lay down and take it. You know what I mean? I've been through a lot of racial situations, and I was treated like a dog, you know what I mean, and everything. You know what I mean? So I know how it feels. I haven't even been through the worst of racial situations, but I definitely know how it feels to be discriminated against and put through a racist situation. So, do me a favor, research Claudette Colvin's story, learn more about people like that you don't hear about. Because by the time Rosa Parks did her thing, that's when I think that's what really encouraged people to say we need to spread this around the world and let people know that eventually these black people are going to stand up and fight for themselves. That's what we need. We need unity, and we need protection, and we need to stand up and do something about the things that are going wrong in our communities. First we got to stop being at war with each other. You know what I mean? In all these places where gang culture is increasing and increasing, and that just does nothing but pit us against each other, because most of the gangs are black or even Hispanic. You don't hear too many white kids in the gang culture. There's some, but you don't hear about them a whole lot. You know what I mean? The most of them that get in those gangs are just because they live around black people and they just want to be partly accepted in black culture. And so, take a lesson from people like Claudette Colvin. Maybe you can inspire somebody else to do something else, and they can inspire somebody else to do something else, and it will keep growing. I have a book that I wrote called Change You, Change the World, because that's how the world changes. You start with yourself. You start from within, and people follow your example. Rosa Parks, I don't doubt at all that she followed Claudette Colvin's example. And then Martin Luther King Jr. followed her example and said, you know what, let's take this to a higher level. Let's boycott these buses and show them that they're not going to control us. You know what I mean? We're not going to do this. We're going to be united, and we're going to stand up for what's right. And what happened? When they did that, things started changing. Of course, we still got a long way to go. Y'all think y'all got all the freedoms y'all need, but we still not fully free. We're still not there. Just because you can get away with a lot of shit don't mean you're free. So, go back and learn more about these historical events, and the more you know, the more it'll encourage you to stand up and do what's right. So I know I probably ranted a lot, and I apologize, but I'm really passionate about this stuff, and I just wanted to talk and kind of spread the word. We'll be doing a lot more stuff like this during Black History Month, so look out for the next Lost in Thought segment. Coming up soon, you will be seeing a lyrical breakdown, and we're going to keep that on the Black History tip as well, give you some historical Black hip-hop that's conscious and speaks truth to power. All right? So for Trying Hip Hop Podcast, this is your man, Uncle Kurt, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.